Welcome to In the Know with Steph and Joe. In the Know with Steph and Joe is all about small business development. These two entrepreneurs bring real life experience, laughter, and, well, just a ton of knowledge on how to build your small business and make it thrive. After all, this is your creation. Now learn how to make it sing. In the Know with Steph and Joe airs Fridays at 3 p.m. right here on 216 The Net. Like, follow Steph's books and Restoration One of Cary, along with 216 The Net on Facebook, and subscribe to the 216 The Net YouTube channel. Today, closing out 2022, budgeting for 2023. Hey, Steph? I don't know why I let this music go on so long, but I did. There, now it's time to go. Welcome in.
All right. Well, I guess obviously, as you guys can see, Joe is not here. He is on a business trip. He's on a business trip learning and talking about his budgeting and forecasting for 2023. So in hindsight, this show probably would have been better for next week, so Joe could tell everybody everything he learned at his seminar. Yeah, that's true. He probably will tell everybody anyways. So thankfully, Rich, my other half, agreed to come in and stop in on his way home from work, since he handles all of the budgeting and prep work at his real job, I guess. Yeah, right? Yeah, his full-time job.
He doesn't have a pretend job.
So his full-time job, and hopefully we're not going to talk too much about Steph's bookkeeping, budgeting, and forecasting, because we are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so the show's going to get real interesting real fast. So thanks for coming in. Mm-hmm. I know you love being a guest on the show.
Yep. Let's do this.
Hey, look
Hi,
who
Mom.
it is. Hi, Mom.
So now I know that you guys are starting to slow down at work. Mm-hmm. So now you get to do the fun task of counting your warehouse.
Yep.
So I know that that's one thing that I know you love to do and look forward to every single year around this time, right before the holidays hit. Mm-hmm. You guys count the warehouse, and then based upon your count, how do you then project and forecast for your early buy that you put together in March? Or when do you do your early buy? In January?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the inventory count just kind of gives you kind of a baseline of what you actually have, but forecasting it is based off the sales. You know, so when you're going through and you're trying to figure out what you got to buy and what your big movers were, that'll pretty much determine early buy. And not everything needs to be early buy. And the goal of early buy is to secure a good price. Because you're going to be purchasing it at volume. So a couple of things that we watch out for is, one, kind of the seasonality of items, because if we sat there and we sold 40 or 50 heaters in a year, there's a good chance that we're not going to do the same amount of that specific item the following year. A heater will last, depending on the pool, between 5 and 10 years, so if you have a big heater year, you're probably not going to have a big heater year the next year. So depending on the items that were sold would determine what we're going to buy the following year.
So like your big ticket items that you're going to sell a lot of every year are your chemicals. Those are guaranteed 100%. Every pool needs them every year, no matter what. So a lot of small business owners that we work with have concerns about buying things in bulk because they don't have the space. They don't have the, warehouse. And I know that your warehouse is decently sized and you guys have built up with the racks and you've packed it as much as you can, but you've also structured your early buy or your terms with your vendors to take things in part. Like you kind of leverage their warehouse space. You guarantee I'll take 12 pallets of this item, but I only want 4 pallets at a time in this month, and this month. And those are things that you've developed based upon your relationship and projections.
We definitely do. Like, we make a commitment saying this is what we're projecting, this is what we're making a commitment to. And That doesn't mean that we have to buy it, but if you want to maintain a good vendor relationship, you don't want to stick them with a bunch of things that you're not going to buy from them, But typically, we will make a commitment saying that over 2 months or 3 months, we'll do a third and a third and a third, or a half and a half, whatever we work out with them, and take material as is, just because, like you said, we have limited warehouse space, so we don't want to have to go buy another warehouse and store a bunch of stuff that we don't need to. We use our vendors, and that's what they're there for.
Right, because they let you kind of store it there for free-ish. Like you don't pay them a storage fee, but you're committing
they hold
the
the
sale
stock
to them.
Yeah, they hold
Right.
it. They hold it. And in a way, they take the risk of holding it. But we know we've done it for a while, so we know what we're going to be end up buying and what we're going to need, and our vendors trust us that we're not going to stick them. So it's not a big deal.
And then, so on, like, I guess the scarier side of things, when you count the warehouse, that also gives you guys the opportunity to see what type of inventory shrinkage you had due to missing or unbilled items.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you guys take that into consideration going into the next season? Does that cause you guys to potentially change policies and procedures going into the next year? Or I know it, like a former employer, they locked the warehouse down after they did an account and they lost $250,000 in product due to whatever. I know you guys don't lose that much, but and then they locked the warehouse down. Is there things that other business owners might benefit from, like how do you have those conversations with your teams without sounding accusatory?
Look, I don't think we have people that are stealing from us, for one, so it makes it easy to have the conversation. I think people make mistakes when they're billing, and they forget to bill for something or whatever. And so there was a couple things that we did to kind of try to catch all the missed billings. And one of them was in the morning going over work orders with the guys and just reviewing what was on every job. So if you guys went out there and you did this heater repair, and I know X, Y, and Z has to be on this work order, and Z is not on this work order, we talk about it. We make sure that he actually used that part, and we get it on the invoice before we send. So we have a whole invoice review just to make sure before we send anything to the customer, to try to be as accurate as possible and to catch everything before it goes out. Two is doing an inventory count, which can become quite laborious, but can be very valuable. We've caught $1,000 on one invoice just because we were doing a weekly inventory count. Wow. Because some guy forgot to put, like, he did a cleaning, and he forgot to put like 25 gallons of liquid chlorine on a work order. Didn't think he stole it. He just didn't put it on there, So did a count, looked what was on his truck, looked what was on his truck versus what we had in the system. Huge discrepancy. Went through his work orders, found out he didn't bill for it. Okay, we caught that billing. Very valuable. But doing an inventory count is, depending on what you stock on those trucks, it can take some time, and we used to try to do it every Monday because every Monday was a light day for us, So guys would take an hour, pull their trucks apart, we'd scan everything, see what the discrepancy was, and then have a conversation,
Nothing says Dexter more than 25 gallons of liquid chlorine. Sharon asks, when you do your inventory, do you compare previous inventory plus purchases, less sales, to determine that actual inventory is in line with previous year's activities?
So compare compare previous inventory plus purchases, less sales. Yeah, that would be our net inventory. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, that just tell us exactly what we have left, and you try to catch it as you go. Like I said, trying to do a weekly inventory count, trying to review invoices on a daily. So you have a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, making sure everything's out of the warehouse is being accounted for.
So to both of you, we're seeing inflation. We're seeing rising prices everywhere. So as you're forecasting for 2023, how much do you build in, or have you done this through a period of time like this where, well, we anticipate it to be this cost, but then all of a sudden it's this cost? Or
there's a few things, and that really runs into a problem when you do a fixed billing model. So if you're selling something at a certain price and that's your price and there's no changing that price, that's when it becomes a problem. So you kind of have to, as a company, you have to be able to leave yourself an out with the customer which is just communication. We're experiencing price increases. You may experience a price increase on these fixed items that we're selling you. And if you do, we'll give you so many days notice, and, you try to do your best, with that. Um, a lot of that, and that's kind of the play with early buy. The early buy kind of hedges your bet against inflation because you're able to try to buy as much at this price so that the retail price you created from what you bought ends up being a good price for you all year, So when we do early buy, I don't try to buy for the whole year on early buy because, sometimes, like you said, there's ebbs and flows of the business. So I try to do about 80 to 85% of what I think we're going to need, chemical wise, on an early buy. And then from there, we kind of go, we kind of know how the season's going to end. If we had a good season, if we're going to lose customers, or, you kind of know just being in the trenches with it. So.
And then outside of just inventory, another year-end thing that a lot of business owners or employers are doing is the annual reviews for their staff. And I know that you guys are seasonal, so your teams are going to slowly start in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, slowly start kind of ending their season. Mm-hmm. So do you give them kind of some feedback from the season to kind of give them that little warm and fuzzy job security coming in the spring? Or is there some guys that you kind of just let know hey, thanks for your best efforts this year, but in the spring you might want to seek other options?
Yeah, we definitely don't do that. We're not calling you back. You just
so they have to wait.
You don't get called back.
So they have to wait till the spring.
Yeah, you figure it out. They call you. We tell you we're full, whatever. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of annual reviews just because by the end of the season, that's too late. If you're involved with the day to day, you should be catching those mistakes day to day and giving feedback to your people and adjusting course and getting better and whatever, telling them everything, all the mistakes that they made at the end of the year,
Well, it could also be positive things that you guys liked. It doesn't have to just be the mistakes.
But I feel like I do that throughout the year, so that's why I don't really do an annual review. It's something that I talk to the guys. If I find a problem, we'll figure out a solution and we try to get it corrected. The season moves so fast. We got pretty much guys are employed for 6 months, so it's moving fast, and the guys are working a lot of hours. And so it's really hard to come down on guys that are working between 80 and 100 hours a week and nitpicking every mistake. There's certain things you're just gonna have to let go, and you're gonna have to accept as part of just doing business. And then there's other things that, depending on how important it is, you're going to have to be a little bit more of a hard ass about, But I think the feedback daily, weekly, I guess would
more valuable.
Culminate to a positive annual review if we were to talk about what you did well and what you did, and what you could improve on.
Yeah. And then I know at this time of the year, you and the owner of the company kind of sit down and start putting some projections together for 2023 and, just determining and deciding if you need to put another vehicle on the road based upon your growth from this year. And so how does that kind of conversation look a lot of times, with regards to planning? Are you guys on the same page, or do you really have to pitch it to him to spend some money, or is he coming to you looking to spend money? How is that communication with you being his GM?
I think the one thing that we've learned is just always have one truck ready. If we buy a truck and we have it sitting, I'd rather it be sitting than not be ready for when the work comes. So what we've learned is that we keep one truck that, that we're trying to fill, right. At all times. We're trying to fill it.
But it could either be a work thing, or if a truck goes down due to a flat
right.
tire or engine problem, right. or whatever you guys have.
Yeah, if we're not able to get a rental or whatever, then we have this truck available for somebody to take out if that does happen. But in terms of managing growth through purchasing of trucks, we try to keep one always ready. So whether when a guy is one of the helpers is ready to come up and run his own route or repairs, we have it ready and we can just go and get it done. And then once that one gets used up, we pull another one in.
Yeah.
And we buy another one.
And then, so speaking of budgeting, when you guys sit down, because I know you handle a lot of their marketing and programs and things like that you guys put out there to attract new clientele, or encourage, retention of current clients, how does that budgeting strategy go? Are you given a dollar amount for the year and then you have to spend it wisely, or do you have to ask permission every time you're looking to increase or decrease some type of program or SEO or whatever you're doing, or flyers or whatever?
We don't really talk about a marketing budget like per se. Like I don't know if we necessarily have a budget for marketing, and in all reality, the amount of money that we spend on marketing is probably well below what we should be spending on marketing. To be honest with you, we probably spend, 3%, 4% of our gross on marketing, like we don't spend a lot of money on marketing. Two, honestly, I probably wouldn't have to ask permission. I would just make the adjustment. And if I saw something, I would just pivot and handle it. I don't really have conversations with ownership about that kind of stuff. I just handle it. But some of that is trial and error, so trying to, like, sometimes with marketing, I feel like you just throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. So if you keep trying to do the same thing over and over again and it's not working, well, common sense would tell you to do something different, and so, sometimes you got to take a little money and go light it on fire and see if this works, and that's what I do. I just keep trying new things, especially if we kind of, what determines the budget is probably the profitability of the service, like there's services there's work that we absolutely want that doesn't cost a lot of resources on our end, but it's extremely profitable if you know how to do it. So for us in the pool business, if I do a liner install, those are high. It's a large job. It has a lot of profit built into it, and not everybody can do it. So we started kind of structuring our marketing to go after that business, and
yeah, but also you guys send teams, your liner team, you send them for continuing education. They went and did on-job training. Like, it wasn't just, you guys decided to do liners last week. You guys invested the front end cost and stuff in your people and in the process to make sure you
you got to make sure you can do the work,
because that's it's a skilled thing to do the liner and get it in without wrinkles and bubbles and et cetera. Like it's not just
and that's what I mean. It's like doing work.
It's not like filling up a water bed or anything like that.
Like honestly, like there's work for us like doing leak detection. Like leak detection is so laborious. It takes up a whole crew. Not a lot of money built into doing the leak detection. People don't necessarily want to pay for all your time to do the leak detection. Like it's just work that's not that great.
As you get older, you'll learn more about leak protection.
Detection.
Detection.
This is preventative.
So, what are some other kind of year-end things that you guys do that could potentially help some other small business owners out there that you guys do in preparation? I know that you guys take the time and like all of your hoses and stuff that you use for the trash pumps and everything to drain the pools. I know that you guys, or you used to have somebody go in like the back of the warehouse or whatever and kind of run water through them to see what's leaking, what's, like all the O-rings, make sure everything is ready to go for
you got to check your equipment.
Season.
You check your equipment, to make sure it's ready for the guys. You check your trash pumps, do the oil changes, all those little things, to make sure you're as ready for the season as possible. One of the biggest improvements we probably had in our business is that, every year we would send out our opening letter, and, we'd send out our opening letter in like March, April, March, not really April, but like end of February, March, we'd be sending it out. And then in a month we're doing openings, And so what that would do, it would put a huge debt on the office. The office would be slammed between trying to close out opening worker orders in and putting them in at the same time and collecting deposits and all these things. So starting that process much earlier, like January 1, we're sending them out now. And on top of that, we're starting to get deposits, which kind of helps us with our winter money, because money gets a little tight in the winter for us. So, Yeah, it was being able to take something that all the work we were doing in a month, we gave ourselves 4 months to do it instead, basically.
Yeah, Linda, I think Rich has been telling her that for years. Right. So budgeting isn't just so what I'm hearing is budgeting isn't just monetarily budgeting.
Money, time.
It's time.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
How long is it going to take to do this, or that's and being a business owner that doesn't have a lot of product or overhead, I never thought of that as we were rolling into this. I was like, oh well, we're going to budget for marketing and
time's a big thing. Yeah,
but I never thought of that, so that's interesting.
Yeah, getting that started early, because a lot of people like to take the winter off and put their feet up and be like, oh yeah, but you hate yourself in April because you didn't do the preparation, January, February, March, and that can be a real problem, and that's how you lose customers. I mean, you'll lose customers by doing that stuff because you didn't get their work order and you didn't show up when you're supposed to show up, didn't collect the deposits, and now you're not getting paid on jobs, and it's like getting as far ahead as you can, so you're just worrying about today rather than the last week, and you don't have a backlog. It really helps.
And you guys also take the time over the winter, even though most of your field staff is laid off during the winter, but you do the ones that you're for sure going to bring back, or potentially bring back at a promotion, you invest the time to send them to those continuing education classes or programs like auto cover repairs or plaster or whatever's the next thing that you guys want to get into. That's like your time that you use to make sure that's that, but that's also, you have to budget and plan for that because those classes aren't cheap, and they also you have to see the value in the ROI, especially on something like that.
Yeah, and the budgeting for that kind of stuff for the winter starts in April. How we're going to save money and how we're going to keep the doors open and still be able to do everything we want to accomplish starts in April. Like that's when the planning starts for it. And then by the time you're pretty much shut down by the end of November, hopefully your plan in April works out and you can do everything you want to do, but like it doesn't, like that plan doesn't start, like I said, it doesn't start in November when everything shuts down. It starts way back then, the money, how much money you're going to have for winter,
And then how often do you kind of, like, I know in your head you kind of have an idea of what you're going to spend, what you think you're going to get back on that, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, how often do you kind of re-review your initial thoughts and plans that you kind of come up with in January or now and have to pivot? Like, how frequently do you go back? I mean, obviously it's not every single component of it, but there's certain things. I think that people are definitely one thing. Because you have to be fast if somebody is problematic. Like,
that is probably the toughest part, is people. Everything else I feel like is easy for me, but finding people that can do the work in the event that you lose somebody, because I can throw a real wrench in is the hardest part, is getting talent into the company. That's by far the hardest and probably the hardest thing to get. There's not like pool school that we can just send somebody to and they come out and, oh, look, I can go do everything. That's why it's really important to make as much of an investment as you make into your technicians. You have to make that same investment into your helpers, because your helpers are what are the people that are going to bail you out when somebody quits. Those are the people that are going to come in and try to save the day and take over whatever work they can handle.
Yeah, I know that some people say that you should always be hiring. Like, you should always have like an active
I don't
job
disagree with
ad.
That. Yeah, I agree with that.
So if you have an active, I've always been curious about this, but if you have an active job ad out and people are applying, do you call them back, or you only call them back if you're actually really looking to fill a spot? Like, do you talk to people like randomly throughout the year just to kind of gauge the talent pool, or no?
I feel like there's always somebody about to be on the outs and somebody you want to come in,
Yeah.
So the somebody that's on the outs, they just have to mess up one more time and then you can get, and sometimes it lines up, where this guy's looking to jump ship and this guy is just not working out for you and it can work out, But yeah, if like I said, we're a seasonal business, man. So everybody's reevaluating their options at the end of the season.
Right.
And for the most part, I mean, we've had really good retention with our guys. Our core group of guys, all of our techs. I can't think of the last tech we lost in the past 2 or 3 years. We've had a solid group of guys for 3 years, and the helpers kind of come and go, but we've been able to retain a lot of good helpers, and they've ultimately become techs too. So
right.
Yeah, so you're always kind of, it's important, man. You get a guy, you get a rock star guy, and it makes your life so much easier. It's important.
That's what I told my wife.
Yeah,
she fell short.
She doesn't believe me.
Right. She's like, well, let me know when you find one. So as we look at wrapping up 2022, budgeting for 2023, and Derek says, love this team show. What are the biggest, I guess, swings and misses that you guys see companies do? Steph, you work with several companies. When it comes, do they just not do it? Do they do it too late? Do they not understand the process? Where are the biggest oh shit moments?
I mean, for me, from a bookkeeping perspective, when we have, the thing that always is difficult for me to give a straight answer on is when a client will call and be like, what do you think I'm spending too much money on? Well, what I would spend money on is probably different than what you would spend money on. I also don't work in your industry, so I don't know every little micro detail of what, you should and shouldn't be spending money on. I could give you the average percentages of things like your cost of goods sold versus your sales versus your overhead costs versus, I could give you some average percentages, but I feel like what you're spending your money on and what you could cut back on. Mm-hmm. Like we had a client that they're like, well, I'm like, well, what do you think your biggest expense is? And they're like, well, I utilize these 2 different vendors. So, but one vendor I could get product at 25% less than the other vendor, and they always have the same amount of stock. Well, then my advice to you is stop using the other vendor or slow down using the other vendor and primarily use the one that you're going to get the better deal on to then be able to protect your bottom line. Like, to me, I feel like that's kind of simple logic, but I don't know your relationship with those 2 vendors. Like, I don't know if the one that's cheaper delivers stuff and half the pallet's broken every time, or if it's good 100% of the time. So
it's my nephew.
From an accounting perspective, it's difficult for me to answer some of those questions. Yeah. What I can tell people is that this time of the year, fourth quarter, is your prime time to really look at your first 3 quarters and get some estimates put together going into fourth quarter so you know what to expect come tax time. And by what I mean by that is if you're going to actually file on the deadline of April 15th, or if you're going to file an extension because you grew a lot more than you anticipated, so you have a way higher profit than the last year, and you might have a higher tax liability, and you weren't necessarily financially prepared, and filing that extension is going to give you that little bit of grace time before you got to pay the piper. I mean, you'll still have to make some type of payment on April 15th to file the extension, but...
And right now in the fourth quarter, we hear a lot of, hey man, you need a new printer? Go get a new printer. You need
spend your money.
Spend your money, right? Is that budgeted in, or is it like, oh crap, we made too much and now let's go buy a bunch of stuff?
I think the biggest misconception is that people go get loans. So they gain the liability, which goes on your balance sheet, which is also where your bank account is. And the only thing, like, for example, like if you go buy a car and you put it on a loan, the only thing that hits your profit and loss is your interest that you're paying on the loan and the depreciation of the piece of equipment or vehicle or whatever it is. As for your down payment and your principal on the loan payment, that doesn't affect your profit and loss at all, unless it's a lease. unless it's a vehicle lease, you could do it one of two ways. You could either put some of it on, you could put on your balance sheet and do it like a traditional thing if you're expecting to purchase it, or you could write off the full lease payment on your profit and loss. You could do it, whatever. But if you're buying something, it's different. So people make I think, the mistake of either spending money that they don't have in anticipation of driving down their tax liability.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the money to buy said printer, you probably don't have the money to still pay the government, because you think about what tax bracket you're in and the percentage. A lot of, we'll say, small to like micro to small businesses are probably putting around 25 to 30% of profit away for tax time if they don't have a traditional payroll as owners, if they're on draws. Then you look at how much money you have in your account, you look at how much a printer is going to cost. Is that really going to offset that liability to the extent of,
changing your tax bracket,
right, of where you're going to really reap that benefit? Like, now is the time of the year, though, if you have a heavy amount of cash surplus and you want to go buy a new piece of equipment or a new computer or something, yes, now is the time to do it and take that write-off and try and cut the liability down. But it's but you have to make sure you have the cash to do it. I think people hear go spend, and they don't understand the ramifications when you put things on credit card or get lines of credit to spend.
Yeah. And we don't have a huge cash surplus here at DDOE, so you can make your checks out payable to DDOE Enterprises. We'd be grateful for all those listeners out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some employers, at this time of the year in fourth quarter, they like to do the give back to their staff. So they'll do like a holiday party or end of year party or something as like a thank you.
Yeah.
And that's something that they could write off. That's
probably the best
is
investment.
Also, like a nice gesture and a nice thing to do to thank your team for all the hard work that they've done for the year. Or they have those, your holiday bonuses or
Turkey.
Right. You get a turkey. Right.
And I think that's just to kind of come back to what you'd said about when people ask you the question, like, what am I spending too much money on? Like, I feel like that's like a bad question, not just because it's down to the individual, like whatever you want to spend your money on, you know what I mean? But I feel like at the heart of what the person thinking is maybe wrong. It's that's not going to grow your business. I think if you focus on sales and how do I make more money, so this expense that I'm worrying about pretty much starts to shrink, as a percentage across how much money I'm making, I think that's I think that's a better perspective. I'm not saying you should ignore all the expenses of your business, but focusing on your sales, because that's the lifeline of your business, is way more beneficial, I think, than worrying about if I'm spending too much money at Starbucks. Like, don't worry about Starbucks. Why don't you go find some accounts? You know what I mean?
Right. Starbucks is a sticking point on the show.
Yeah.
Well,
clearly,
whatever.
Clearly, you're not a longtime listener.
Is it?
But so for sales and growing the business and strategizing and sitting down and figuring that out. So, like, for example, in our CRM that we have for Steph's books, we have probably 20 different things that we've identified that we've gotten business from the different chambers that we've been in, the different networking groups, my car wrap, the website, the Google ads. Like, we have so many different things. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the year, when we sit down and take a look at, everything, I know that you do like a monthly review with our website people and determine if we're going to put more money in there or just maintain. But I feel like a lot of business owners have a hard time trimming the fat when it comes to their marketing and really investing into the full-on money-making things. Like, I feel like they have so many, feel good kind of things that they do. Like, for example, we just spent, I don't know, a few $100, which isn't like a whole lot of money, but it's still money, on this trunk or treat that we're doing this weekend on Sunday, at the East Campus in McHenry from 12 to 3. And that most likely, I'm going to bet probably there's like a 0.0001% chance that we will gain a client from doing that, because it's mostly going to be children from the ages of 7 to 10 coming and trick-or-treating at, there's like 39 other businesses that are doing this with us, but how do you continue to do those things if you haven't had a very good growth year? How do you kind of cut the warm and fuzzies out and have to make that kind of hard decision? Or do you never cut the warm and fuzzy items out?
It's not warm and fuzzy for me, it's my time, and it's if it's not helping, then I don't want to waste my time doing it. That's really what it comes down to. There's been a lot of things that I spent a lot of time on that just I completely failed at, and it didn't work. And then when I finally found something that worked, and we got a good reaction of it, that's when I put all my time into it. Which is why I said earlier, sometimes you just throw things at the wall and see, what works. I'm not saying it's the best strategy, but that's what's kind of worked for me. And so ultimately, like, cutting out the warm and fuzzies isn't warm and fuzzy for me, because if it's a waste of time to me and it's not bringing me sales, then I don't really waste my time on it doing it anymore. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And I just rather pivot and try something new.
Yeah. Well, I guess
me personally.
I guess I just handle the warm and fuzzies budget, and he handles the marketing sales budget.
Yeah. I mean, it's your time. If it was my time, I wouldn't be doing that. That's how you like to spend your time. Doing that stuff. For me, like, it's very black and white. Like, if it's not working, then I don't like to waste my time doing it. So,
do you feel like there's like a slight difference in that because I'm the face of the company, and so I should be out there like shaking hands and kissing babies, and you're more of the behind the scenes?
It depends on your strategy.
Operations manager kind of position.
It depends on your strategy. If you're trying to do something locally, then and you're trying to impact locally, and your business is based on relationships that you have with local people, then yeah, you got to be taking your time and investing it in local events and whatever. If you feel like your best customer is found on the internet, then obviously you shouldn't be going out and shaking hands and meeting and kissing babies. You should be writing content. You should be figuring out different ways to do your ads. You should be doing social media. You should be doing a bunch of other things. It depends on what you want to do. Because ultimately you have to. If you don't like doing it, then like I don't like going out there and shaking hands and kissing babies like she does. I'd rather be refining everything on the internet. That's just how my mind works.
I prefer kissing hands and shaking babies.
Yeah.
That's a whole different story.
No, that's just how I work, and she's way different.
Well, it is, but then a lot of times though that people haven't budgeted that time, to your point, and all of a sudden every event that pops up, it's like, oh, I got to be there. Oh, I got to be there. Well, how much did you budget for the year?
Well, and did you get anything out of it?
And what was your return?
What did you get out of it? Like, you're going to go there and blow a couple hours at the end of the night, and go.
So,
I get it.
Over at the bank, we invested a lot of time and money in whole sponsorships for golf outings. Well, we've got a meeting next week to sit down and go, okay, what was our investment and what did we get out of it? And which ones are good return of our investment in time, and which one isn't for the next year.
Right.
So, but a lot of times a small business will be like, oh, there's a ribbon cutting. I got to cut out and go get that. Or, oops, there's this. I got to cut out and go get that. Or it's that you got to nibble. I went to a mixer. We had a one-on-one. I might get something. So now I got to think I got to go to the next mixer, or I'm going to miss that fish.
Well, this is what I also hate about networking too. My biggest problem with networking is if you get into networking groups and for whatever reason it doesn't work out in that group, or you're not getting business from it, but you did get accounts from it, you leave that networking group. Typically those accounts leave. Because the valuable thing that somebody brings to a networking group is their business, right? So for them to continue to get business, they have to dangle the carrot in front of somebody. And so the bouncing around networking groups and doing all that can be a huge, it's a huge wave of you can just lose a bunch of accounts at once,
right?
Because they just walk. Because I get it, because you have to go take your business and go give it to this other person so that they'll give you leads.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it can create, I feel like, good, long lasting accounts, but you can also lose a lot of accounts in there, you know, versus when you just go out and meet somebody and it's because somebody needed your service, rather than giving them your business because they want something back from you.
Right.
You know what I mean? I feel like that isn't always the healthiest thing for your business. I think it works, but you also have to have other things, you know.
Well, I think you also run into the problem that we've talked about before on the show is you have so many mouths to feed then.
Right.
Like
exactly.
going to all those functions and being part of all those groups and doing all those things, like doing everything and not being selective with what you're committing time and presence to, that it, you know, how many people can you meet from the same industry that you have to like rotate the leads through, and then people get mad. You know, like I have a core group of other small business owners that I will refer my clients to or family to, and or myself, I use them myself personally, and they, you know, have or have not referred business to me based upon the needs. I mean, I'm kind of a, you know, it's a unique thing because I'm B2B and a lot of people I know are B2C. So I don't look at it as what they've given me. I just need them to take care of whoever I give to them. But I also don't want to have to deal with the backlash of going to the next event and someone being like, oh, well, I heard you gave this lead to so-and-so and why didn't I get the lead and this and that, because that happens. So, I mean, I pulled back a lot from that type of stuff. So since I pulled back from networking groups and I pulled back from some events and things like that, then that afforded Rich to have a higher budget for the real marketing budget of Steph's books, to put some more money into these other strategies that him and our website team came up with. And it actually turned out to be pretty fruitful for us this year with that new strategy, and being able to take that money and just shift it into that. I still have a Warm and Fuzzies budget. It's just smaller.
Yeah, but there comes a point in everybody's business where you've built it to a place where you don't need to be in 6 different referral groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you've now built a reputation, built a business, and
it becomes maintenance, you know, a little bit.
Exactly.
Right. You just kind of
your customers are now hey, you go talk to.
Yeah. when you first start the business in the first year or two, I mean, you got to be, you know, you're out there hitting the circuit, you know, hitting that circuit hard, you know, but, you know, once you establish the relationships, it kind of becomes a maintenance thing, you know, but I always think, at least for our business model, like I feel like the internet's probably going to be the most stable, fruitful thing for us, you know,
that's good.
Personally.
And it's good to get to that point. I mean, your local chambers are always good people. But.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always going to be part of our local chambers. We're always going to support that. I mean, we're always going to do community things. We'll always have budget
social network
for that kind of stuff, but it's just, you know, I just don't go like before. I would be that business owner when we first opened that went to every single ribbon cutting, that went to every single mixer, that went to every single scramble, that went to the Christmas thing and the Halloween thing. And I did all of it. The young professionals, like I went and invested a lot of time to the point where like 2 out of my 5 work days were basically me just running from event to ribbon cutting to lunch and learn to something else, and I got 0 work done. And then I'm like, well, this stuff still had to get done. Like I still had to run payrolls. Like people still needed me to do stuff. So then I'm like, you know, yes, I have a staff and they facilitate a lot of stuff, but I still have things that I do on a daily basis that I have to facilitate. And there just wasn't the value versus my time anymore in that. You know, like I still maintain relationships with the people that I've met. I still go to events. I still go to things, just not as often as I used to, because I have to figure it out from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that ultimately comes down to networking, which is what she's illustrating here, is it requires your time, and it doesn't work when you're not working. So if you're not there doing it, like
out of sight, out of mind.
It's out of sight. With the internet, it's it's working when you're not working. And you don't have you put it. It's a different tax on your time.
Like I've like when I was just like one person, before I hired a staff and I was doing all of that, it just got very overwhelming at a point. But
well, then there's the late hours. We all secretly just want Rich to show up. Your bearded IT guy.
Yeah.
That's why we invite you. Absolutely. But yeah, so I think really, and what I really love about this today is especially with a business that doesn't have a lot of overhead, is that time. I've never budgeted. I'm like, hey, I got to do whatever I got to do to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got to do this, that, or the third, and I've never just sat down at the beginning or the end of the year and go, okay, let me really budget out my time. Where does it fall? How much am I putting in marketing? How much am I putting in networking? How much am I putting in producing? Yeah,
and that's another thing right there is like because you can kind of get into this thing where you don't have a lot of overhead, right? So you're keeping a lot of money, but how well is your business growing? So maybe you're not spending enough, right? You're not spending enough money to get the growth that if that is what you want to do,
right?
You know what I mean? If you want to grow your business,
yeah.
That's something we learned too. We weren't spending enough money on marketing, and so we had to get a real dollar amount together and get it. And I mean, it's paid itself off in spades.
That's good.
It's been really, really good for us. So, not just for the bookkeeping business, but also for the pool business too.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So you got to spend that money, and get some to get people in the door.
Yeah, that's why I say it's when you don't have that overhead. I understand inventory. From a banking standpoint, I understand profit loss. I understand, here's how much revenue I make from a loan, and what's my revenue goal for the next year. But again, I mean, today's a big light bulb goes off about time, and it's just great.
Yeah, it's important.
So it's good.
Yeah. Figure out where it's best to put it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go.
All right, you go. Thanks for coming in.
All right.
That's Rich Conley, everybody, right there. The man, the myth, the legend. Heading out. Big applause for him.
I'm here to go get Eli.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm surprised Eli isn't driving yet, but
soon. He will be soon.
Riding a dinosaur home. So, as you do you sit with? Are you part of your customers' budgeting meetings, or?
Like I could show them how to create budgets within the QuickBooks software and put percentages. Like if they sit down and they need to really sit down and figure out their desires of like their growth percentages for the year. They need to figure out what expense, like we could kind of collectively work on cutting out some expenses or give some suggestions. But ultimately, the business owner themselves has to drive the bus on that whole thing to execute it, to make it work.
Right.
So we could show them once we put the budget into QuickBooks, and we could pull reports called budget versus actuals, and they can see if they were hitting their numbers, see if they were hitting their percentages. There's ways to manage that, to ensure that they are hitting all of those things. We work a lot more with the CPAs right now. Like we're going into our our soft busy season is what I would call it, where it's just the maintenance clients that are having us send over their first 3 quarters to their CPA, putting some projections together, making sure that they're on track with their tax planning. And then their CPA would provide some information to them if they need to pay additional monies and where they want to go, with that, so they don't get that bill. But that's also why we always suggest that you manage your books through the year. So this way you have
Right.
something to give your CPA now at this time of the year versus the shoebox in March and you're filing in April. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I owe the government $20,000. Like I went out and bought a new truck, or I took my family on a vacation because I took a distribution and I thought that we had the money, and now the money's gone and now we don't have it. Like now what do we do? Well, now you got to take the loan out from the government and then pay them the interest on that money.
Yeah. I try to stay away from loans. I just on a business.
So that's why we always tell people that you should, if you need to save yourself from yourself, you should have more than one bank account for the business. And you should be putting a percentage of the money every month or every quarter into this other account. And then when you meet with your CPA, and that money should technically be your cushion to pay the IRS or the state any monies that you might owe them from the profits. And whatever's left over, if there is money left over in that account, then that's, I guess, your fund money. Right. Or your money to reinvest for next year. But you should be putting money aside and be prepared. Like for me, I pay taxes quarterly. So I will log into the IRS website or the state's website, and I will pay them the monies that I believe that I owe them. Mm-hmm. So this way, then at the end of the year, when I do my taxes, I'm not like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Oh boy, where am I? I got to get a loan to pay my taxes.
Right.
Yikes. Yeah.
So, so we kind of work with clients on that, and it's much easier also to see where all your money is going in to maintain your books and keep them clean for throughout the year. Because like Rich had mentioned, if he has to pivot during the year, whether it be with a team of people, or he has to pivot on a marketing strategy, or like purchasing from a vendor because the pricing changes because of inflation, the only way you're going to know that is if you're looking at your numbers on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, to determine, what's going on. And also you should have a separate CRM to figure out where all of your sales are coming from. Because I was surprised, like when Rich showed me, because he runs all of our analytics, and I have been surprised by where things have come from before, like that I didn't realize so many deals came from like my car wrap. And, so I guess it pays to not have the privacy that sometimes I desire by not having a car wrapped, it's fun when you're taking a road trip, because I know you guys road trip versus fly. It's fun when you're on the highway and Rich will pull up, because I'll be driving, and he'll pull up the little, I don't know what he pulls up on the website, something, and he could see people in the different states pinging our website while we're driving on the highway.
Nice. And
stuff. But then there's also the whole fear that they're looking at our website while they are also going 85 miles an hour. So, I don't know.
You need a good bookkeeper at 85 miles an hour, perhaps.
Or I've been at red lights and people have honked at me and been like, hey, and I think that they're going to yell at me about my driving, but then they're like, oh, is this your number? I got whatever. I need to have a question.
Give me the old thumbs up. Yeah, man. It's good.
But I mean, to kind of, I guess, cluster all of this stuff, because it was a lot of information in the last hour.
Yeah. A ton of good stuff, yeah.
But, now this fourth quarter is the time to start evaluating your inventory, your staffing, and if you're going to be potentially giving raises. Mm-hmm. It's time to start looking at even yourself as a business. Is it time to raise your prices? I'm sure Eric will agree that it's time to start looking at all of your office equipment, like your computers and your servers and all of that, to make sure that everything is ready to go for next year. Mm-hmm. And then you need to sit down with your team and let your team know the plan. That is the biggest thing that I think the step that most people miss, is that they have these manager meetings or these owner meetings, and then they don't tell the actual boots on the ground, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the goal for this year. And this is what we're, I let my staff know when we broke last year's numbers. I let them know what month we broke it in, and let them know like this is where we're going, and
That's awesome.
and what's up and coming, and all of these things.
That gives them a piece of the ownership. It gives them the ability to be proud, and when they know the play, they know how to run the play. If they don't know the play, I mean, you could look like the Three Stooges running into everybody,
Right.
Other. The Three Stooges stuff there's a comedy.
I've seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're young.
They had it on Nick at Night.
Oh.
Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so that's how I got to see all them shows.
There it is. Nick at Night. Fantastic. Well, that is good. So we're into about the last 5 minutes. If everybody out there has any questions on closing out 2022, budgeting for 2023, go ahead, throw them up in the comments. But what's coming up in the near future here for Steph and Joe? Joe, is he going to be showing up?
Well, next week Joe should be here. I will not.
Right.
My mom is coming in town because it's Eli's birthday, and we have to go by Gerald officially, the axolotl. So.
What?
Eli's getting an axolotl for his birthday.
I don't know what that is.
It's
Is that like a sausage?
It's a Mexican salamander.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the game Minecraft.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so he named it Gerald.
Hopefully he's not in the car listening with Rich right now.
Well, no, he knows. We went.
Oh, okay.
So the store right down the street.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That what's that called?
Right by McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they breed them there.
Oh.
And stuff. So we went there, and he just had a round of babies.
Yeah.
And so
are those eggs? Do they come out in eggs? It's an ugly creature, Sharon says.
She is one to talk with her hairless cats.
Ooh. Well, you can't get. They don't shed. That's a nice thing. So he's getting it. So does it look like a dinosaur? Is he excited? I mean, I know he likes dinosaurs.
I'll show you a picture after it's just like this. So it's white. But like it's kind of like its body it comes in all different colors, but he wants this white one with pink frills. So it has it looks like this kind of like, and so it can come out of the water for short periods of time. And it looks like a not fully developed tadpole or whatever. It has like a tail, like a tadpole, but like legs. It's very weird looking.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm probably not doing it justice, but yeah. So next week I will not be here. But then let's see. Joe sent me the lineup that we created because we did the whole rest of the year. So next week Joe will be doing spooky business stories. So we did that last year around this time, and that seemed to be really fun and had a lot of crowd participation. And then we're gonna do one on cleaning house. So kind of a spin-off of this show and kind of executing the plan and getting everything good to go for 2023 officially. And then on Veterans Day, we're going to be doing kind of a show on military tactics and implementing them into your business.
All right.
And stuff. So that should be kind of a fun show. And then on the 18th, we have traveling with coworkers / employees and the rules to live by with that. So that should be kind of a fun show because I'm sure everybody has stories for that.
Yes, that could be a great interactive show for all of our listeners out there to call and be like, hey.
Yeah, because I'm sure most of the people have gone on a business trip, whether it's a previous life or current life. And, obviously.
Yeah, let us know those fun ones that cause divorces.
As always, no names have to be mentioned.
Children, when you thought you weren't going to have any, those type of things. It's always good. Not saying that has happened on business trips, but just saying that might have happened on business trips. Absolutely. Of course, In the Know with Steph and Joe can be heard right here from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central every Friday. And you can catch them again out online on Spotify, on places like that, wherever you hear your local podcasts. And they're brought to you through the financial support of our good friends over at Steph's Bookkeeping Service. Check her out at stephsbooks.com, 847-942-3004. And our good friends over at Restoration One of Cary. Check them out. I don't see it up there on the screen right now, so I can't tell you the phone number.
What? Yeah. For Restoration One?
Yeah.
Oh, I only know Joe's cell phone number, and that's a no-no.
Yeah, let's not send that out.
So,
but for all of us here, thanks for tuning in, hanging out with us today as we talked about closing out 2022, budgeting for 2023. We'll see you the next time we see you. But until then, be good, but more importantly, be good to one another.